The Forbidden Chamber. The alien city lay in ruins under the shadow of a broken sky. Tall towers once touched the heavens, but now they leaned like dying trees, covered in cracks and vines. In the center of this city stood the chamber, sealed, silent, and eternal. It was not made of stone like the rest of the ruins, but of a smooth black surface that reflected no light. The aliens called it the Forbidden Chamber, and for countless generations they had tried to open it, yet it never moved. Many had struck it with weapons, lasers, and fire, but the surface remained untouched. Some had tried prayers, chants, and old rituals, but the chamber never answered. It was said that inside rested either a great treasure or a great curse. Legends warned that opening it would change the fate of their world forever. So, in time, the aliens gave up. They built temples around it, they told stories to their children, and they kept guards to watch it. But none truly believed it could ever be opened. Then came the human. He was not from their world, not from their stars. He was an explorer, wandering with nothing but curiosity and courage. His ship had landed among the ruins, and the aliens watched him with suspicion. He was smaller than their warriors, weaker in muscle, and slower in stride. But his eyes carried something different, something that the aliens could not explain. It was the look of someone who saw puzzles where others saw walls. The human walked slowly around the chamber. He placed his hand on the cold black surface and listened. The aliens laughed at him, calling him foolish. Even our strongest could not open it, they said, how can a fragile human succeed? But the human did not answer. He traced the strange markings along the chamber's edges, lines that looked like cracks but were too perfect to be natural. He whispered softly, not in their language, but in his own, as if speaking to the chamber itself. The air felt heavy. The ground seemed to hum beneath his feet. For the first time in centuries, the chamber gave a sign. A faint glow flickered across its surface, like starlight trapped under glass. The aliens gasped, stepping back in fear. The human pulled his hand away, shocked, but his eyes lit with excitement. It responds, he said quietly, though none of the aliens understood his words. Still, they felt the meaning. Something had awakened. The alien elders rushed forward, their voices trembling. Stop him, they cried, this is forbidden. Warriors raised their weapons, but none dared strike. For deep inside, even their hearts were trembling. They had lived their entire lives under the shadow of the sealed chamber. Now, in front of their eyes, it was no longer silent. The human ignored their shouts. He pressed his hand again, this time firmer. The glow spread wider, carving bright symbols into the surface. The air shook with low rumbling, like thunder trapped underground. Dust fell from the ruined towers, and the earth itself seemed to breathe. The aliens scattered, some kneeling, others fleeing. But their eyes never left the human. Why him? Why not them? For centuries they had tried and failed. Their strongest warriors had broken their blades against this surface. Their wisest priests had sung until their voices cracked. Yet the chamber had never answered. But now, a stranger, a human, had awakened it with a single touch. The human felt a pull inside his chest. It was not strength, nor power, but something softer, something alive. He could not explain it. It was as if the chamber was not a door of stone, but a living being, waiting for the right voice. And for reasons beyond reason, that voice was human. The glow faded, leaving silence once more. But the silence was no longer empty. It was heavy, alive, filled with unseen breath. The human stepped back, his hand trembling. He knew the chamber was not truly open, not yet. But it had moved, it had stirred. The first crack in eternity had appeared. The aliens gathered in whispers. Some called him chosen, others called him cursed. Some wanted to worship him, others wanted to kill him. But none could deny what they had seen. The chamber had spoken, and it had spoken to a human. That night, the city did not sleep. Torches burned across the ruins. Elders argued, priests prayed, and warriors sharpened their blades. But in the center of it all, the chamber waited. Silent, dark, but no longer asleep. And the human, standing before it, felt a truth in his heart. This was only the beginning. The human's curiosity. The ruins were restless after the glow of the chamber. Aliens whispered in fear, children cried, and warriors stayed awake with weapons in hand. But the human did not sleep. He sat near the sealed chamber, staring at its surface, his mind burning with questions. The night was cold, but curiosity was a fire that kept him warm. When the alien elders approached him, their faces were tight with anger. They demanded answers. "What did you do?" one asked, his voice shaking. "What curse have you brought upon us?" But the human only tilted his head and touched the black surface again. It was cold, but it pulsed faintly, like the heartbeat of a sleeping beast. "I only listened," he said softly, though they did not understand his words. Yet something in his calmness made them uneasy. The aliens feared the chamber, but the human did not. Where they saw danger, he saw mystery. Where they felt terror, he felt wonder. That difference set him apart, and the chamber seemed to sense it. Every time his hand brushed the carvings, the faint light stirred. Not enough to open, but enough to prove that the connection was real. By dawn, a crowd had gathered. Some shouted that the human must leave, that his presence would doom them all. Others argued that he was the key, that destiny had chosen him. The arguments grew louder until the warriors threatened to fight each other. But the human ignored them all. His eyes were fixed only on the symbols carved into the chamber's surface. He traced them carefully with his fingers. Each line, each curve, each glowing mark felt familiar though he had never seen them before. It was as if the chamber spoke in a silent language, one only his soul could hear. The aliens shook their heads in disbelief. "This is madness," they muttered. "He does not know our history, our gods, our science." Yet still the chamber responded to him, not to them. The human pulled a small device from his pack. It was an old scanner, something meant to study minerals and ruins. He aimed it at the surface. The machine hummed, then stuttered, confused. The readings danced wildly, showing impossible patterns. The human smiled faintly, whispering to himself. "It's not stone, not metal, not anything I've seen before." His curiosity only grew stronger. Hours passed, and the aliens kept watching him. At first with anger, then with confusion, and finally with silence. For the first time in centuries, they too began to wonder. Could the chamber truly be waiting for him? Could a fragile outsider see what they never saw? The thought was painful, but undeniable. By midday, the human pressed his palm against the chamber once more. This time, he closed his eyes. He slowed his breathing, almost like meditation. The air grew heavy, a strange hum echoed, and the symbols lit again, brighter than before. The aliens gasped, some falling to their knees. The ground trembled faintly as if the ruins themselves were awakening. Inside the chamber, something stirred. Not seen, but felt, like a shadow pressing against the walls. The human's heartbeat quickened. His hand grew warm, almost burning, but he did not pull away. He wanted to understand, to know what secret had been locked away for so long. And in that moment, a thought entered his mind. Not his own, but something ancient, something alien. It whispered, not in words, but in feelings. Recognition, acceptance, and warning. The human staggered back, gasping, his hand shaking. The glow faded again, leaving the chamber cold and silent. The aliens rushed forward, shouting, demanding to know what happened. But he could not answer, not yet. He only knew that the chamber had spoken to him. And it had shown him that this was not simply a door. It was a prison. That night, he sat alone, staring at the ruins under the pale starlight. The aliens watched him from a distance, too afraid to come closer. He held his hand against his chest, feeling the strange warmth that lingered inside him. The chamber had left something within him, a spark, a key, or maybe a burden. He did not know what it meant. But his curiosity was stronger than his fear. He whispered to himself with a quiet smile. This is only the beginning. The chamber remained silent, yet the whole city seemed to breathe with it. The ruins that once felt dead now felt alive, waiting. The aliens did not know if tomorrow would bring salvation or destruction. But the human did not stop. Where they feared the unknown, he walked toward it. And deep inside the sealed walls, something ancient waited for him to return. The first signs of opening. The chamber stood in silence, but the silence was no longer empty. The aliens could feel it, the air around the ruins carried a faint vibration, like the sound of a drum too deep for the ear. Even the wind moved differently, circling the black surface as if drawn to it. The human did not leave its side, his eyes fixed on the glowing lines that had appeared. To him, the chamber was no longer a wall, it was a puzzle, a living puzzle waiting for his touch. The elders warned him again. Stop, you do not understand what sleeps within, they cried, their voices breaking under fear. But the human only shook his head slowly. He did not understand their legends, their warnings, or their gods. But he understood one thing, the chamber had chosen to respond to him, and to him alone. The aliens gathered at a distance, their numbers growing each day. Some came to curse him, some came to watch, and some came with hope. Rumors spread through the ruined city. The human will open it, some whispered, he will bring our salvation. Others hissed in anger, he will doom us all. The human pressed his hand to the surface again, this time with both palms. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear, but from the strange bond he felt with the chamber. The black surface shivered under his touch. A deep line of light spread across the middle like a crack of lightning frozen in stone. Gasps erupted from the crowd, warriors raised their weapons, and children hid behind their mothers. For centuries, nothing had changed, and now a single human had broken the eternal silence. The glow spread, the symbols carved into the walls igniting one after another. They pulsed like veins of fire, weaving around the chamber, forming a map of light. The ground shook softly, dust falling from the ancient towers nearby. The ruins groaned like a beast waking from a long sleep. The aliens screamed in fear, some falling to their knees, others fleeing the square. But the human did not move. His eyes were wide, his breath sharp, but he stood firm. Something inside him whispered, "Keep going." A sudden voice cut through the chaos. An alien priest, old and trembling, raised his staff and shouted. "This is the prophecy," he cried, "the stranger opens the gate, the end begins." The crowd roared in panic, their fear feeding into chaos. But still, the human did not step away. The light from the chamber grew brighter, filling his face with a pale glow. His reflection shimmered on the black surface, but it was not only his reflection. Behind him, in the dark glass, shadows moved, shapes that did not belong. The human staggered back, blinking. But when he turned, there was nothing, only the ruins, only the frightened aliens staring at him. He looked again at the surface, and again the shadows danced inside, as if the chamber held not emptiness but another world. A world waiting to be released. The glowing crack down the middle pulsed once more, then faded slowly. The chamber sealed itself again, silent, unmoving. The crowd exhaled in relief, though their fear had not vanished. It was not open, not yet, but it had moved, it had awakened. And that was enough to change everything. The aliens argued loudly. "Kill him before he opens it fully," some shouted, their blades ready. "Protect him, he is the key," others cried, their eyes filled with desperate hope. For the first time in their long history, the sealed chamber had shifted, and they no longer knew what to believe. The human sat down, his hands trembling. His palms still glowed faintly with the light of the chamber, a mark burned into his skin. He closed his eyes, breathing hard. He had not forced the chamber, he had only touched it, only listened. It had responded as if waiting for him. Why him, why a human, why not the alien people who had guarded it for centuries? The questions twisted inside his mind, but his curiosity was stronger than his doubt. That night, under the pale stars, he returned to the chamber again, alone. He placed his hand once more on the cold black surface, but this time he whispered not in words, but in thought. And for the briefest second, the chamber whispered back. A faint voice, ancient and distant, not in sound but in feeling. It was a warning, and it was a welcome. The human pulled his hand away, his heart racing. He looked at the silent surface and smiled faintly. It wants to open, he whispered to himself, it is waiting. From the shadows, the alien elders watched with narrowed eyes. They did not trust him, they did not trust the chamber. But deep down, they all felt the same truth. The first signs had already appeared. The chamber would not remain sealed forever. And only the human could decide what would come next. The resistance. The chamber's glow had shaken the ruined city. Its light had burned in the minds of every alien who saw it. For the first time in centuries, the sealed door had responded, and it had responded to a human. The news spread like fire, carried from the ruins into the valleys and villages beyond. By morning, hundreds had gathered, their voices rising in anger, fear, and disbelief. The elders met in council, their faces pale with worry. The human must be stopped, one said, slamming his fist on the stone table. He has awakened what we swore never to awaken, said another. Their voices trembled, not only with fear of the chamber, but with fear of losing control. For if the human succeeded, their history, their legends, their power, all of it would crumble. But not all agreed. A younger counselor rose and spoke quietly. Perhaps the chamber chose him for a reason, he said, perhaps our fear blinded us for too long. The elders shouted him down, calling him a traitor. Still, his words lingered in the air, unwanted but impossible to ignore. Outside, the crowd grew restless. Warriors raised their blades and cried for the human's death. Priests shouted that the prophecy had begun. Mothers clutched their children, whispering that the end of their world was near. The ruins shook with the sound of their fear, louder than the storming winds. Through it all, the human stood silent before the chamber. He heard their anger but did not turn away. His hands still tingled with the warmth of the symbols. His heart still beat in rhythm with the chamber's pulse. He knew he could not stop now, even if the whole world turned against him. That night, when the torches burned and the crowds chanted, a group of alien warriors stepped forward. Their armor glimmered in the firelight, their eyes sharp with rage. They circled the human, blades drawn. Leave now, their leader growled, or you will not leave alive. The human did not move. He simply placed his hand on the chamber once more. The surface glowed faintly, and the warriors froze. Fear flickered in their eyes, but anger quickly returned. They raised their weapons higher. Before the first blade could strike, the ground rumbled beneath their feet. A low hum vibrated through the ruins, growing louder, stronger. The chamber pulsed with sudden light, casting long shadows across the crowd. The warriors staggered back, their blades trembling in their hands. The people screamed, fleeing in panic. But the human did not flinch. He stood calm, his hand pressed firmly against the living wall. The glow faded once more, leaving silence behind. The warriors lowered their blades slowly, shame burning in their eyes. They had been ready to kill him, but the chamber itself had stopped them. For the crowd, that moment was more terrifying than any weapon. It was proof that the human and the chamber were connected. The elders tried to regain control. They raised their staffs and shouted. Do not trust him, they cried, he is a stranger, a danger, a curse upon us all. But their words felt weaker now, their authority cracking like old stone. Too many had seen the truth with their own eyes. The chamber resisted them, but not him. In secret, some aliens approached the human at night. They came not with weapons, but with questions. "Why you?" they whispered. "What did it show you? What waits inside?" The human answered little, only that the chamber was not only a door but a prison. That something within was alive, waiting. The aliens left in silence, carrying his words like fire hidden under their cloaks. By the third night, resistance turned violent again. A band of masked aliens crept into the ruins, their plan simple: kill the human before he could touch the chamber again. But when they struck, the chamber pulsed with blinding light. The attackers screamed, dropping their blades, clutching their eyes. They fled into the darkness, leaving the human untouched. The people who witnessed it fell to their knees, not in fear, but in awe. The elders were furious, their control slipping with every moment. They gathered once more, their voices sharp with desperation. "If we cannot kill him, then we must kill hope," one said. "Destroy the chamber itself, shatter it, bury it," another growled. But they knew in their hearts that it was impossible. For centuries they had tried, and the chamber had never broken. It would not break now. Meanwhile, the human felt the bond growing stronger. Every time he touched the surface, the glow spread faster, the pulse grew louder. The chamber was not resisting him, it was guiding him. And though the aliens resisted with all their might, he knew one truth. The chamber would open, and nothing could stop it. The revelation inside. The night was silent, yet the ruins were alive with waiting breath. The crowd had grown larger than ever, aliens filling every broken street, standing shoulder to shoulder under the pale light of two moons. Some came with weapons, ready to stop the human if he dared to touch the chamber again. Others came with trembling hope, praying he was their savior. And in the middle of it all stood the human, small against the towering black wall, but unshaken. His palms still bore the faint glowing marks left by the chamber. He lifted them slowly, placing them against the surface once more. A hum rolled through the air, deep and endless, like the voice of the planet itself. The crowd gasped as the glowing lines blazed brighter than ever. The symbols lit up one after another until the entire chamber pulsed like a beating heart. Then came the sound. A crack, sharp and echoing, splitting the silence into pieces. The black surface shuddered, light spilling through its lines like molten fire. The ground shook, sending dust and pebbles tumbling from the ruined towers. The aliens screamed, some fleeing in terror, others falling to their knees. Even the warriors dropped their blades, covering their faces as the brilliance grew blinding. The human did not move. His breath was heavy, his heart racing, but his hands stayed firm. The chamber groaned like a mountain breaking apart. The glowing crack widened, splitting down the middle until the sealed door finally shifted. For the first time in countless centuries, the chamber began to open. A blast of air rushed out, cold and heavy, as if it had been trapped for ages. The flames of torches flickered violently, nearly dying in the sudden gust. The humans staggered but did not fall. The crowd clutched one another, their voices rising in panic. "No, no, close it," some screamed, "stop him before it's too late." But it was already too late. The doors parted slowly, grinding like stone though no dust fell from them. A light poured out from within, soft at first, then brighter, a glow that was not fire, not lightning, not anything they had known. It bathed the human's face, filling his eyes with reflection. And then came the vision. Not only to him, but to all who stood before the chamber. Images burst into the air like ripples on water. They saw towering beings unlike themselves, ancient and powerful, their shapes shimmering like fire wrapped in armor. They saw stars burning, worlds rising and falling, wars fought in silence across the black sea of space. The aliens cried out in terror, some shielding their eyes, others frozen in awe. The human stood still, his mouth slightly open, his body trembling at the weight of it all. The vision shifted, showing the past. The aliens saw their own ancestors kneeling before those great beings. Not as masters, not as equals, but as witnesses. The chamber had not been built for them. It had been built by something older, something that had chosen not them, but humanity. The human fell to his knees, clutching his head as the voice returned. It was not sound but thought, deep and heavy, filling every part of him. You are the key, it said, not in words, but in feeling. This chamber was sealed until your kind arrived. He gasped, shaking, his hands pressed against the ground. The weight of destiny pressed hard on his shoulders. He was not ready for it, yet it had already chosen him. Inside the chamber, a structure glimmered, not treasure, not weapons, but a machine. Its surface pulsed with the same light as the marks on his hands. The aliens stared in silence, their voices gone, their faith and fear tangled together. What is it? One whispered, what have we guarded all these centuries? The answer came not from the human, not from the elders, but from the chamber itself. A projection filled the air, showing stars in chaos, great shadows spreading across galaxies. It was not a gift, it was a warning. The machine had been locked away not to hide power, but to hide danger. It was a weapon, yes, but also a key. And only a human could use it, only a human could decide if it should ever be used. The crowd wailed, their voices torn between worship and rage. Some cried, "He is chosen," while others shouted, "He will bring our destruction." The human rose slowly, his eyes filled with the reflection of the glowing machine. He did not understand it fully, but he knew one truth: the galaxy had trusted his kind with something greater than survival. It had trusted them with choice. And as the doors of the chamber yawned open, the human felt the weight of that choice pressing against his heart. He turned to the terrified crowd, his voice calm but steady. "This was never yours," he said softly, "it was always waiting for us." The human's burden. The chamber stood wide open, glowing with ancient light. The air that poured out was heavy, carrying the scent of old stone and forgotten storms. The alien crowd had fallen into silence, their voices stolen by fear. For inside the chamber, the machine pulsed like a heart made of stars. And it answered only to the human. He stood at the threshold, his body trembling, his hands still marked with the glowing sigils. Every breath felt heavier than the last, as if the very weight of the galaxy had been set upon him. He did not want power, he did not come here seeking destiny. Yet the chamber had chosen him, and there was no turning back. When he stepped inside, the light embraced him. The walls shimmered with patterns that shifted like living constellations. Each step echoed with whispers, voices not his own, ancient and countless. They did not speak in words, but in feelings. Warnings, memories, sorrow, and command. The machine pulsed louder as he drew closer. It was vast, stretching upward beyond sight. Its surface was black and silver, alive with rivers of light flowing through it. The human reached out, his hands shaking. The marks on his palms flared in response, as though the machine recognized its key. In that instant, vision struck his mind. He saw stars burning, entire worlds turning to ash under shadows that blotted out suns. He saw civilizations rise and fall, their screams swallowed by silence. He saw battles fought with weapons beyond imagination. And he saw the truth: the chamber was a prison. The machine was not simply a tool, it was a lock. It had been built to hold something back. And his touch was the key that could open it again. The human stumbled, gasping, clutching his head. The aliens outside wailed, their voices rising in fear. They saw him falter, and they believed the curse had begun. "Close it," they cried, "seal it again before it destroys us." But the chamber did not close. It stayed open, its light burning brighter, its whispers growing louder. The elders stepped forward, their voices shaking with desperation. "You are not one of us," they shouted, "this burden is not yours, leave it." But deep inside, even they knew their words were lies. For centuries they had tried and failed. The chamber never once stirred for them. It had waited for something different. It had waited for a human. The human sank to his knees before the machine. Tears filled his eyes, not from weakness, but from the crushing truth. He had not only opened the chamber. He had awakened the danger it held. And now the choice was his: unleash what had been locked away, or guard it until his last breath. A soft voice stirred inside his mind, clearer now. It was the machine itself, or perhaps the memory of those who built it. You carry the burden of choice, it said without words. Use this power, and the galaxy may survive, but you will awaken what was meant never to rise again. Seal it once more, and you protect this age, but you condemn future ages to the same fate. The human bowed his head, his heart racing. There was no right path, only sacrifice. The aliens pressed closer to the doorway, watching him with wide, fearful eyes. Some whispered prayers, others cursed his name. To them he was no longer a man, but a hinge on which the universe would turn. He rose slowly, placing both hands on the machine. The light surged, flooding the chamber, spilling out into the ruins. Every alien fell silent as the glow touched them. In that light they too saw glimpses, of wars, of shadows, of choices made and lost. They cried out, clutching their faces, but the human did not let go. His voice broke the silence, calm but heavy with sorrow. This is not my burden alone, he whispered. It belongs to all of us, but it listens only to me. The machine pulsed in agreement, its light growing steady, waiting for his decision. The human stepped back, his body shaking from the strain. He turned to the crowd, his face pale but his eyes fierce. I cannot leave it closed forever, he said, but I cannot open it without reason. The words carried across the ruins like thunder. Every alien heard them, and though many did not understand, they felt the truth. The burden was his, but the cost would be shared by all. That night, the ruins did not sleep. The chamber's glow lit the city brighter than the moon's. The people gathered in silence, watching the human, fearing him, needing him. And deep within the chamber, the machine waited, patient as time itself. For soon, the human would be forced to choose. The final choice. The ruins held their breath. The chamber glowed like a star torn from the heavens, its light painting every broken wall and every fearful face. The alien crowd stood frozen, no longer shouting, no longer cursing, only waiting. For all their centuries of guarding the chamber, it had never been theirs. Now its heart beat in rhythm with the humans, and only he could decide its fate. The human stood at the center, his hands trembling, his eyes locked on the towering machine. Every step he took toward it echoed like thunder. The weight of countless lives pressed down on his shoulders, heavier than any chain. He had seen the visions, he had heard the whispers. He knew this was no gift, no blessing. It was power, and power always came with a price. The elders broke the silence, their voices filled with fear. Close it, stranger, they pleaded, seal it again before it destroys us all. But younger voices rose among the crowd. No, they cried, let him use it, let him save us from the darkness to come. The people split, hope and fear clashing in the ruins like storm and fire. Yet none of them held the choice. It was his alone. The human's palms burned with light as he placed them against the machine. At once the chamber roared to life, the air vibrating with raw energy. Visions surged into his mind once more. He saw galaxies crumbling under shadows too vast to fight. He saw entire worlds falling silent, their skies torn apart. And then he saw something else, humanity, standing defiant against the void. Small, fragile, but unyielding. He understood then why the chamber had waited for his kind. Not because they were stronger, but because they refused to bow. The machine spoke within him, its voice ancient and steady. You can release this power and face the coming storm, but you will awaken what we locked away. Or you can seal it once more, and doom another age to repeat our mistakes. The human's heart pounded, his thoughts torn in every direction. To open it was to risk destruction. To close it was to abandon countless futures. Both choices were heavy with sorrow. The crowd pressed forward, their eyes wide, their breaths sharp. Some fell to their knees, whispering prayers to him as if he were already a god. Others lifted stones, ready to kill him if he made the wrong choice. But he barely heard them. The world had fallen away, leaving only him and the machine. He closed his eyes and whispered. I cannot run from this. The chamber pulsed in agreement, its light flaring brighter. The machine hummed, waiting for his final command. The human raised his head, his voice calm but firm. If I open it, I will not do it for power, he said, I will do it to protect, to fight what is coming. And if I seal it, I will not do it out of fear, but out of love for those who cannot bear the cost. His words echoed through the ruins, carried on the glowing wind. The aliens listened, their fear trembling into silence. They had never heard such certainty in a voice before. He pressed both hands against the machine, his body trembling under the surge of energy. The chamber shook violently, the ground splitting, towers collapsing in showers of stone. The sky above cracked with lightning though no storm had gathered. The light swallowed him, brighter than suns, brighter than fire. The aliens screamed and shielded their eyes. When the light finally dimmed, the human still stood, but his body was changed. The marks on his palms now burned like molten gold, his eyes glowing faintly with the machine's reflection. He stepped back from the machine, his voice steady. It is not yet time, he whispered, but when the storm comes, I will be ready. The chamber's glow softened, the doors sliding halfway shut, not sealed, not open. Waiting, balanced between fate and choice. The machine pulsed once more, not in command, but in trust. It had given him time, and time was the rarest gift of all. The aliens looked at him with awe and dread. Some bowed, calling him savior. Others turned away, whispering that he had doomed them all. But none could deny the truth. The burden was his, and his alone. The human walked out of the chamber, the ruins trembling behind him. The night air wrapped around him, heavy with the weight of silence. He did not smile, he did not weep. He only whispered to himself, a promise carried into the stars. When the shadows rise, I will not hide. And the chamber pulsed faintly in answer, like a heartbeat waiting in the dark.